Hi, I'm the Mitten, and you're watching the Mitten on Knittin. Today we're joined by Mr. Homestead Hobbyist himself. Ken, our very first not a sponsor, has agreed to do an interview with us on the podcast. Woohoo! Even though I've never interviewed anyone on the podcast like ever. So Ken, thank you so much for putting up with this and all the preamble. You can hear him chuckling in the background there. This is a simulcast video that we're hoping we're going to get to edit because, oh my goodness, yeah, we probably really need to edit, but we're not sure about that. So if it comes out weird and bizarre and has things in it, let's just apologize for that right up front. So it's Ken, it's rovings, it's big balls of fluffy roving that he has to show us today. And that's what's coming up. So, oh yeah, and you won't see the music or anything because that's all added on extra. So welcome, welcome. This is episode 14. There are 92 days left to Rhinebeck. Only 92 days left. And today I was at Rhinebeck and we were prepping the area for the festival. Yes, it starts this early, and I did manage to get a few things. But enough of that, and let's go to Ken. Ken, how are you doing?
Good, how are you?
I'm doing really well. I promised I would keep the camera focused on you if you gave me short answers like that. So,
I mean, it wasn't a short answer. It was a shoot. I was just checking my calendar for something because I couldn't remember exactly which festival competes with Rhinebeck over here on the West Coast. And I just forgot. And you caught me right when I was opening my calendar. But it was more than just good.
oh, okay.
You know, I'm not Bruce Willis in Fifth Element.
He was very famous for giving those one-syllable answers. So the first question, and this is a question from me, why did you leave us, Ken, on the East Coast? It was Judith, wasn't it? Judith McKenzie? You wanted to spend all your time with her?
I mean, yes, I would love to be a part of her fiber harem. But to be honest, Seattle has like mountains and trees and ocean all right jab in together in one place. And so much fiber. And it's not DC.
Well, I mean, that seems fair, but I'd like to point out that Dutchess County has mountains and oceans and trees and everything all jammed together in one place. And fiber, fiber, fiber everywhere. There's sheep in my backyard, although I don't know why they're there, but they're everywhere. So, you know,
now
East
the
Coast.
other element there is it doesn't have 350 days out of the year where it's wet and cloudy. And that's a bonus for me. Like I'm sitting here with this light in my face and I just want to squint. And I'm having to fight that really hard so that I look like a real person being interviewed by you. But when I go outside, you know, I have to look through my eyelashes to see anything. I much prefer cloudy days.
That seems fair. I do understand that. Cloudy days can be pleasant, and they're good days for staining and spinning and knitting and such. So, fiberific.
We're doing moody photographs of gardens.
Yeah, yeah. Although my garden did come out pretty good this year. We were a little dry, but we got some good flowers that came up very nicely, and the daylilies are doing well.
You should really splice in some photos of your garden into this video, if we can edit it.
That would be cool. That would, because Mr. Mitten has spent hours out there working on the garden. So if I can get some of those, I will. Okay, I'm going to go off and do our next question from Rarely. Rarely wants to know, when she sees you, how can she come off not as a fangirl?
don't sound like a dog whistle. I think that's key. You know, if there is a shrill shriek that just continues for more than a couple of seconds. I mean, I certainly have been known to shriek a bit when I'm excited about seeing some of my sweeties at a local festival. But if it goes on for more than a few seconds, that enters some kind of fangirl territory.
Fair enough.
Other than that, try not to show up at my house at random times without letting me know. Now, I think I'm just thinking of stalker. What's the difference between a stalker and a fangirl?
I think the major difference is with a fangirl, they don't actually go after you at your house. They simply, when they see you, they freak out like a stalker, whereas the stalker would actively go after you, which could be kind of awkward.
Okay. So don't be a stalker is one thing.
That's key, I think.
No, I love when people love what I do. And rarely can be as fangirly as she wants.
I think that's terrific. So rarely you're safe. She also wants to know, how did you learn so many languages?
Well, I have intellectual ADD, and every 3 to 4 years I try to find a different hobby. So I took Spanish, French, sign language, and Latin in high school. And in university I took Latin, German, and ancient Greek. And then I lived in Germany for a while. Did I say in Germany I took Latin, German, and ancient Greek?
Wow, you said it like 2 seconds ago and I don't remember.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we'll play back the video and realize what I said. But I meant in university I learned those languages. And I took classes. I'm not fluent in any language other than English. And the problem I have, being from the mid-Atlantic, is that regardless of what language I'm trying to speak, I have a mid-Atlantic accent. So if I'm speaking the 2 sentences I know in Mandarin or Korean, or if I'm speaking German, which I know a little bit more of, or even Spanish, I sound like I'm from the mid-Atlantic. And a lot of times the inflection, the minute tonal qualities are really important for comprehension. So you take that tiara off. Come on. It's not as sparkly as it needs to be. We've learned what a real tiara is from Kath.
Well,
so in case you can't see this, Gretchen has a tiara.
The reason I have the tiara on is because our next question is from Kath. And since it's the first question she's asking out of the interview, I would like to know on her behalf, do you miss her as much as she misses you?
You know, that is a loaded question, and I responded to her on Ravelry. And it's just, there is no comparison. I mean, I have this light shining on me, and you're recording it. But I feel like I'm at the bottom of a well, and there's no escape, and there's no brightness. There is no life and no sparkle without Kath.
I understand. I understand.
But I do sometimes wear this award that I won a couple of years ago as one of the hottest gardeners of the DMV.
That's awesome.
Yeah. It was the inaugural contest. Someone else nominated me, and I don't remember who it was. It might have been several people. At the time, I had a 6-pack.
But you drank it sometime?
No. Well, it was a short-lived moment of fitness. I lost a bunch of weight, and then I started doing parkour and got very, very fit. But then I moved to Saudi Arabia and was in a relationship with Neck Punch, who does not abuse anyone physically, only emotionally. So that involved a lot of eating. I don't know. You know, life happens and priorities change. And cooking was no longer a priority for me, so the weight just came back. I mean, not just came back. It took a couple of years. But now that I'm
Well,
here in Seattle.
it takes a lot of dedication. You can't just, gain that
It's
weight automatically. You have to really commit. I don't think people understand that
it's kind of the opposite
it's
for me.
not easy to gain weight. You
I
have to
have
focus
to
and
commit to cooking and eating right and exercising in order to keep the weight off. Gaining weight is super easy because of the habits that I developed as a child. I mean, that's what I do. I don't have healthy eating habits or exercise ever. That's my default.
you would think, but me, I'm having trouble gaining weight and keeping it on. And
Different people have different challenges with weight.
I'd been overweight forever and ever, and I lost a ton of weight. I mean, like I weigh less now than I did in high school, kind of weight. And it really takes focus and to try and keep weight on. Your body can
It
do
also
weird things.
it
But
definitely changes as you age as well. When I was younger and trying to lose weight, it just disappeared, like it had never been there. And now, that's really not how it's working.
oh, I feel that. Um, but maybe we should talk a little bit about I don't know, fiber.
Fiber?
Yeah.
Oh,
So
that old thing.
the point. What I'd like to know is where can we find your fiber? Are there festivals that you regularly go to? Parking lots where you're known to hang out?
That sounds like, well, sorry, it just sounds like a drug deal, but when you're selling fiber out of the back of your car in a parking lot, it is kind of like a drug deal. I mean,
Well,
people
that's
get
how I
this
first met
high.
you.
Yeah. Um, can you, so I had this tiny, tiny little car, and I also had like luggage and a spinning wheel in it, along with all of this fiber. When I was pulling bags of fiber out, could you believe how much fit in there? I mean, I had a car that was just a little bit bigger than a smart car. Dozen
That
people
was a
standing
lot of
around
fiber.
it. Yeah.
There were quite a lot of women carrying your big balls around when you pulled it out of the car.
You mean like distracted? Let me answer your question. Then we'll come back to my big balls. So I only started doing festivals about a year and a half ago. But there are a couple that I do regularly. Actually, there's only one I've done more than once. It's Powhatan's Festival of Fiber in Powhatan near Richmond, Virginia, the last weekend of April. So that one I really like because there are a ton of vendors with some really awesome stuff, but it's also, it's not packed like Rhinebeck or Maryland Sheep and Wool.
Right.
You have time to go talk to the vendors and watch the sheep shearing demo without having to elbow your way in. And the past 2 years have been kind of rainy, but it's still a fun event. I'm hoping next year it is not rainy. But I will be there next April, and I'll also be at Maryland Sheep and Wool next May, first weekend of May. So those are two I definitely will be
And
at.
Rhinebeck?
And I won't be at Rhinebeck. I attended last year, but this year I am, now that I've lived in Seattle, I looked at fall festivals in this area that I could vend at, and I will be vending at another one here. I'll be at the Columbia Gorge Fiber Festival in mid-October, and no. See, this is where the conversation, I wanted to look at my calendar. I'm doing Fiber Fusion in Washington and the Columbia Gorge Fiber Festival in Oregon, and I can't remember which weekend is which festival, but one of them is the same weekend as Rhinebeck.
You're actually allowed to reach over and grab your calendar and look. I mean, just because we're doing a video doesn't mean you have to be still. You can,
Well,
like,
it's important to make eye contact.
well, I'll keep the camera on me while you're doing this, so no one at all will see you, looking there. See, I've just flicked it back to you this very second.
So it is Fiber Fusion in Washington. That's the same weekend as Rhinebeck, and I will be at Columbia Gorge Fiber Festival in Oregon the last weekend of October.
But you have an online website?
I do. It's the homesteadhobbyist.etsy.com, and sometime, or maybe end of August or early September, I plan on migrating to a different site, just the homesteadhobbyist.com. I think Etsy is great. It's definitely wonderful for people just starting out. But I've grown a lot since I opened my shop, and I think it's time to move to my own place.
Speaking of moving, I'm going to move for a second, and I'm going to turn my fan off because I think we're getting a little bit of extra noise that is taking up some of our signal. And I'm just going to get rid of that extra noise. So I hope this doesn't make anybody dizzy or nauseous while I wander about my fiber room.
You can edit this out and maybe put a picture of the merman in or something.
Yeah, I'm just worried that we won't be able to edit. That's why I wanted to give an explanation of what was going on.
So if this podcast is a little bit longer than usual, that's why.
Actually, this podcast is already exceeded.
Because of all the setup. Oh my gosh.
Well, not even just the setup, just the broadcast right now has exceeded the usual length. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. Let's dive into some more questions.
Well, Kath, do you have your tiara?
I do.
There we go. Kath would like to know, when and how did you learn how to knit?
Well, ostensibly I learned how to knit when I was 19 in university on a Friday night while watching Mean Girls instead of going out to the bar that I was legally allowed to drink in because I went to school in Canada. Those were my Friday nights in university. Knitting.
Wow.
I'm so exciting.
You're a crazy guy.
Right. But it wasn't until only 3 years ago, after Kyoko Jadevine had taught me how to spin the cotton that I had grown in my community garden plot, that I really started, knitting for real. Before, I only knew the knit stitch, so I would make, garter stitch scarves, just long rectangles with knit, 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 knit. But then I spun. Oh no!
No, come back.
I spun the yarn that I used to make this.
Wow, that is gorgeous.
It was a prize braid of merino yak from Corgi Hill. And once I spun this yarn, I was like, I have to knit something with it. And I decided this is my first shawl. It's the Grouchy Geisha pattern. And I just got addicted from starting to spin the yarn to finishing the shawl was like 3 or 4 weeks. And for someone who had just learned how to spin, I thought that was a good timeline. It's not a big shawl, it's just a shawlette.
Yeah, but it's lace.
But it's lace.
It's stunningly gorgeous, and I'm totally jealous.
So this was my real, learning how to knit moment, I think. I knew the basics, and I had taught myself how to do a cable prior to this. But once I knit with my first skein of hand spun, I was just hooked.
Wow, that's amazing. Frau Miller would like to know if you could give us an overview of your current awesome felting projects?
Ah, um, awesome is subjective. So I,
So
I only
we
pulled
only want
out
to see
two.
the awesome projects.
I only pulled out two. There are a lot that don't come out like I want them to. When you're new to felting, sometimes you forget to check and things shift and they don't go where you want them to, or they're not attaching the way you want them to.
Hmm.
So this is
Beautiful.
a
That is
scarf
gorgeous.
that I actually have up in the shop right now. It is Mindy's taffy on Shetland Black Baby Alpaca mulberry silk.
Wow.
So the mulberry silk gets a little wrinkly because it doesn't felt. I actually don't know if you can see that.
Yeah, you can kind of see the texture.
Yeah. And then I just overlaid it with a pattern of strips and blobs for interest. So this one was fun.
That's
And it's one
beautiful.
that I actually tossed into the dryer instead of Nuno felting by hand. I
Wow.
laid out the pattern, rolled it up, and tossed it in the dryer. So the dryer did all the work for me. But that's part of the challenge with some of these is that the if you toss it in the dryer, it doesn't come out right. It's much better to put the real work in and make sure that everything is going well during
Right.
the process.
That makes sense. Show me the other one.
So this is the Deviant Kraken.
Oh, wow.
So this one, you can definitely see the streaks of silk
Yeah.
are more
Absolutely.
puckery.
Mm-hmm.
And then you also see the merino and the black baby alpaca up in there. And this is just my Savage blend, pulled apart and then felted. But it looks amazing, and it would be great with, maybe some. Well, this one actually does have a little bit of a sparkle accent, but just put some Firestar on top of there, or some other accent to pull maybe some of the brighter colors out.
Mm-hmm.
But this one, I just wanted to see what it would look like by itself, and I love it.
That is beautiful. Now, I understand that you may have a special knit along for us. Is that something you'd like to tell us about?
So the first ever Sweets Off the Wheel spin along was with Heavenly Wools, and she dyed a beautiful variegated colorway in reds and greens and blues, and also provided some mohair lots and undyed. I actually don't know how to pronounce this. I used to know. Hanwi half-bred from New Zealand.
Okay.
So everyone had the same starting fiber, and it was our first ever spin along. So people were still figuring out what we're doing. So I spun part of the fiber, and I made my first ever bubble crepe yarn. It was really exciting. It was awesome. And then I decided I wanted to knit a project, because if you got a finished object, you would be eligible for a prize. And I'm like, yeah, I'm going to be eligible for that prize. So I designed and knit mostly fingerless mitts, because I wanted some man lace. These are also known as lesbian street fighter gloves.
Okay.
But they're perfect for when you're typing or using the computer, because it has so much padding for your
Right.
wrists.
I
It
love
helps
that
protect
pattern
you.
on it.
Yeah, and you can see the striping.
Yeah, that open work is beautiful.
And since I'm using such a thick yarn and I had such large needles, man lace, right? So this is what I had suggested as the knit along, because the pattern I put up for free, and people were like, "Oh, that's great," and no one's knit it yet.
Well,
I would love to see more of these walking around. People come up to me at festivals and say, "Oh, that's so gorgeous." And I'm like, "Oh, go find the lesbian Street Fighter gloves on Ravelry. It's free. You can knit them yourself." But no one has yet.
well, we're just going to have to take care of that, and I'll be putting the pattern up on the Mitten on Knittin Ravelry group. We'll put a link to the pattern, and we'll all do a knit along with it, because if there's one thing I like knitting, it's mittens.
And they're actually a little warm right now. I turned my AC off, so it's getting hot in here again. But because of the lace, the open nature of the lace, it doesn't usually, like, I don't really sweat much, even if it is hot. And this wool that I'm using is kind of like merino. It does keep you warm. So they're not mitts that you want to wear in the dead of winter, unless you live in Panama.
Or Kauai or Maui.
Oh, stop.
Okay.
I mean, yeah.
We'll move on. Kath would like to know, how did you discover that you have an amazing talent for fiber prep and dyeing?
This was another Jade Vine Kyoko moment. I was so lucky that I knew Kyoko. She taught me so much about plants and tea, and I won't say photography because I just don't exercise that enough to say I do it well, and I don't want people to think that the photos that I take are inspired by her, because I don't have time to practice like I should. But she taught me so many things, and Smart Ashley, invited us over one day so that we could do a dye session in our kitchen. It ended up being the same day as my brother's bachelor party. So the first time I ever dyed anything, it was a mess. It was a mess. I got a pound of Polworth silk from Corgi Hill in like a sale that she had. And when I first dyed it, I didn't unbraid it. I just put dye on. I'm like,
oh my
that's
God.
what you do. That's how you dye it, right? And no one else said anything because, we were still learning. Like, we didn't, I'm sure someone else thought it, but I don't think anyone said it. So I left it, I rolled it up in the cellophane and I left because I had to go to my brother's bachelor party. And Kyoko and Ashley, steamed it and set it for me. And when I got it, I'm like, oh, this is really pale, because I hadn't put a lot of dye on. I thought I had, but that was a lesson I learned. So then I re-dyed it, and I dried it and pulled it apart, and I'm like, there's so much white. So I dyed it again. This is 3 times. It's Polworth felts, right? Somehow it hadn't felted, and we were using, we were using the oven to like heat and steam this. So
oh my God.
all of this stuff that I did for that first pound, not things that I would necessarily do now. But over the course of like a year, I dyed a little bit here and I dyed a little bit there.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think I posted a photo of something that I had dyed, and a couple of sweeties, and I usually blame Lenora, Hanley06,
Yes.
for this. Because I'm pretty sure she was the one who said, open an Etsy shop. And I said, okay, and here's a link. So my whole journey into dyeing and doing fiber prep and all of that is really because sweeties are so awesome and push you into things that you want to do.
So basically what I hear you saying is, because of these 2 bullying girls, you ended up.
No.
But we're really happy that they
No,
did
I
push
am
you into it.
appreciative of the knowledge shared and the support offered by everyone on Sweets Off the Wheel.
That group has been nothing but supportive to me as well, because when I started hanging out there just as a lurker, I had just started learning how to spin, and it was all of the just freely given, information and knowledge and support with all of the spinning and fiber, from everything from, choosing a wheel to choosing fiber and what to do with it, and how to be better and how to see what you're doing, because really we're all individual people in our little houses and apartments all over the world, and nobody's there hands-on to help us out, and they're just fantastic. I can't say enough about them. So
they're sweeties.
I think that's where they got the name.
Also,
let's see.
For one moment, I'm getting my delivery. It should take like 30 seconds.
Well, you go ahead. If I stop the broadcast at this point, it'll cut it out, and then I'll have to find the woman with the gold box around her, which took like a half an hour. So I'm just going to go ahead and talk about what happened today at Rhinebeck while you go and get your dinner, because Ken's having his dinner so late because, because
this is actually groceries. I get my groceries delivered.
Oh my!
I'm like, I don't have a car. I'm not going to go grocery shopping for myself.
All right. Well, you go, and I'm just going to talk about Rhinebeck, because that's what it's all about. So 92 days to go. I went out to Rhinebeck today. We had a spin in and clean up at the wool room with the Elmendorf Guild, which was tons of fun. I rode out there. Excuse me while I take some water.
Hi,
I rode out there with one of my friends, and it was super great and super fun. And we just went out there. We spun up. I must have gotten through 2 ounces of wool, which I haven't gotten through in the longest time. So I got through 2 ounces of the hip strings buoy in Beacon, the yellow. So I only have like half a braid left to do, which is fabulous. But I did pick up a few things. I got, because we had raffles and things like that. So I got the Stephanie Pearl McPhee, I always say her name backwards, Free Range Knitter, which is a really excellent book, so I'll be reading that. And then some wonderful blends of fiber. There's some camel, there's some BFL, and then there's one, these are 4-ounce balls, and then there's one that's labeled Who Knows. So who knows what that could be, but it's going to be a fun spin. And I think they color coordinate rather well. It's a cream, kind of a tan and sort of a gray. Maybe I'll try and do a gradient if I've learned how to spin, but how to count to 10 by that point. Oh, no, 20. See, I'm doing it again. Then I picked up a little bit of, this is a Rambouillet Romney cross, and it's this beautiful chocolate. I don't know, it's got a really good crimp in it. It's already been cleaned, so all I have to do is card it, and I don't know if you can, yeah, you can see that it's got a nice bounce to it, and look at that crimp. It is just really fantastic, nice and springy, really clean, and I mean, really strong fiber there. So I'm very happy about that. So a few pounds of that. And then the fiber I've been waiting for. This is Pearl. Pearl is one of my girlfriend's sheep that she had when she was raising it. And oh, that's just schmutz from the packing material. Don't mind that. Just take that out. But that is some absolutely beautiful. And I mean, this is, you can't really feel it when it's going through your hands. It is so fiberifically soft. Um, that, wow. But that is just going to spin up so great and fantastic. I see Ken is back. He's all poised there. Let me bring you back into the fold. Hang on a second. I just have to figure out how to unmute you. Oh, you're still muted. That's so sad. I can eject him. He's doing sign language, but I don't speak sign language. Oh dear. Now I've got the camera back on. You can. Yes, and we can hear you now too.
But I was stuck in sign language.
But I was just showing, if you go ahead and spin this up, I was trying to draw this out so folks could see just how absolutely fantastic this wonderful, wonderful yarn that I've been waiting forever and ever is going to be. This is going to be
kind of like a light creamy gray.
Yeah, like a silver blue gray.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, come on, totally worth the trip out to Rhinebeck.
I mean, I think just going out to Rhinebeck is worth the trip to Rhinebeck, but having that roving,
this is good.
Speechless.
As well you should be. I've waited a long time for this. And Pearl was a really sweet sheep. She's still alive. She's still alive. She just doesn't live in my town anymore. And no, she's not one of the sheep out in the backyard. Although, again, don't know where they came from. But anyway, so that's what I got when I was out at Rhinebeck. And now that Ken is back, we'll go ahead and go back to our interview questions. Frau Miller would like to know, what do you like most about running Homestead Hobbyist?
Oh my. Well, actually, there are two things that are really kind of competing for me, but they might be the same thing. I love it when I get to meet the people who have bought things from me in the past and hearing, how much they loved it and what they did with it. So if I'm at a festival and they say, oh, I met you at this other festival a couple of months ago, and here's the skein that I spun from what you sold to me. And I have this sense of, I mean, I don't have kids, but I like to think that it's kind of a proud papa moment where I got to see that the fiber that I had grew up into something beautiful. And so along a similar vein, I like to, even if there are people, like Frau Miller, I have not yet met in person. And it would be awesome to do so. But in the meantime, I like seeing photos of those skeins or finished objects. I think the most recent and the most awesome example lately was when our L After the Fact on Ravelry came up to my booth at Maryland Sheep and Wool and said, you have to go to the Fiber Arts competition room and see what I wove out of Mitten's taffy. Because she won first place and she got a special prize. I can't remember what the special prize was, but it's this beautiful clasp weft shawl that she wove. Let me get my Fiber Arts straight. That she wove out of singles of Mindy's taffy that she had pulled the colors apart and separated. And it was just stunning. She did it. She spun the singles and wove the shawl in 5 days. And she said that she didn't even stay up late. She had a job. She had other stuff that she was doing. I can't imagine it, but
wow,
she did it.
That is amazing.
So that is one of the things that I love the most, like seeing all of these things grow.
That is so cool. I can't believe the woman did that in 5 days. That's just, it's totally outside of what I do, really anything. I think some mornings it
Well,
takes me 5 days to get up.
you have so much on your plate. So much.
I have a big plate. What can I tell you? I like filling it with things to do. Um, Kath wants to know, what's your favorite fiber for dyeing and also for working with?
Oh my. Past. I don't want anyone to feel like upset. I don't.
I know that they could be two different ones. One could be like the favorite one because
Yes.
it takes dye and it saturates in one way that is more easy. It's easier for you to see your color concept come through on it, whereas other ones you may like to work with because they give you a surprise every time you work with them. Whereas if you're doing something personally for you, like something that would touch your face, you might, prefer working with a
Yeah, and
lower micron count.
everything that you're saying, I have different preferences for both dyeing and spinning and using. I love fiber. It's so hard to choose. Um, I mean, that's a mean question, Kath. Making me choose. Jeez.
Well,
I really love dyeing gray Shetland and other natural-based fibers
mhm.
because the colors that I come up with, the way they look on Rambouillet or Falkland or white alpaca, is completely different than how they look on gray Shetland or Manx, whatever the second word is pronounced like, because those natural bases add so much depth to the color.
Right.
So I really love that because it's not really a mystery. I know what's going to happen, but it's still exciting to see it compared with whiter bases. But in terms of like spinning and using fiber, I like Rambouillet. I like the softer, springy fibers that also have a bit of strength. So CVM, Rambouillet, Criolla, which is how you pronounce what I have always been saying as Criolla because I'm American. But this is the fiber from Uruguay that I bought as fleece and had processed into roving. And it's super soft, but it's also really strong. And it kind of reminds me of CVM, Ronald sheet fleece. So I really like that. It can go up against your neck, or it can be something else, or it can be felted. It's very versatile.
Now, you sell yarns too. Are any of the yarns made out of that you have there?
Yes, these yarns that I have. This is more of a elongated, thick tube of roving instead of the balls. Oh, I should have gotten a second ball. Well, this is Lance Armstrong. I'm sorry, I'm making myself giggle. We're a
Oh,
family podcast.
I hope we can edit.
I'm sorry. I went rogue.
Well, at least you're wearing clothing. I'm pretty happy about that.
So these are all, they're floor yarn right now. Okay. This is all Criolla from Uruguay. The shepherdess actually, I'm not showing up well, am I?
Actually, the texture is coming through really nicely on my side.
So these were all fleece that the shepherdess sent to a mill here near Seattle. And they're very, they're springy, but they're also solid. I mean, I don't know if you can hear that.
No, you can't. I can't hear that.
Okay.
But it was fun
Well,
watching you try.
It pings really well.
Wow.
So I'm also this ball that I have here is actually from my personal stash. There were a couple of fleece that I had processed into roving that never made it up into the shop because I stole them. And I'm using them, I'm spinning them thin because Crioja is so springy. When you finish the yarn that you spun, the yarn might be fingering before you finish it, but when you're done, maybe it's sport, maybe it's DK. It just really poofs a lot. So I'm spinning it thinner than I'm spinning singles for the other fly for this throw that I'm going to knit at some point when I'm done spinning all 7 pounds. So right now Crioja is my favorite fleece. I've got a ton of yarn. I do have some hand spun as well. This is just a core spun skein.
Wow.
Blues and greens with a bit of brown in it. And this is Wraith, one of my Savage
That
blends.
came out fantastic.
Thank you. I spun it so you get, like, you know, pops of all the different colors throughout. And then I also do hand dye some mill spun yarn. I'm working on expanding what I'm doing with that.
Wow. That's just, I just don't understand why you have all my stuff on a bookcase on the other side of the country, but all right.
Yes. I mean, I've got like a bajillion times more of your stuff in the back room.
Well, I think the post office and I are going to have a conversation about that. And
I can ship it free. It's okay.
in that case, I think Mr. Mitten and I are going to have a conversation about that. All right. Wow. Our next question is from Kath, and she stays awake nights wondering where you, the most amazing and extraordinarily talented Mr. Ken, get your inspiration for your colorways. What goes on inside your head regarding colorways, that is.
So, I don't know. A lot of times I try to challenge myself. A lot of what I dye is really meant to challenge myself to understand color and how it works. So when Shelley, Smiley on Ravelry, asked pink, it was super hard for me. I didn't know what to do. It's pink. Do I just make pink? Is that all I do? No, I want to have other colors in there, but it's taken me a really long time to figure out how to do that. With other things, like the Deviant Kraken, you know, that was just something that I knew I had to do, and I knew how I had to do it. It had to have blood red in it. It had to have squiggly purple, and it had to have dark oceanic blues. And then I just wanted little pops of highlights. A lot of what I do is not intentional, at least in the sense of, you know, I come up with a colorway name before I dye things. Usually I want to see how colors are going to work together, but then I dream up colorway names.
So that was her next question. Where do you come up with the names for the colorways? Kath would like to know.
My own, mostly my own imagination. Mostly. Smartash on Ravelry, Ashley, she was a friend employee for one festival a year or so ago, and I was packaging a couple of the final braids the night before, and I was struggling with a name. I had these braids laid out on my bed in our hotel room, and I was like, come on. I mean, it's gorgeous, and I need to have a name for it. And I was just dead. I couldn't think. And she said, oh, look, it matches the bedspread. I'm like, that's the name. It matches the bedspread. And people were like, oh, why do you name it that? And I'm like, it matched the bedspread. Duh. So it's kind of, it's off the wall. It's not, it doesn't necessarily evoke something, but if you actually put it on the bedspread at the, I don't know, I think it was a Super 8.
It's going to match.
It looks exactly like it, yes. So sometimes the names come out of offhand comments, or I'm just too exhausted to think of something. But
well,
usually there's a little bit more thought put in.
so that brings us to our next question from Rarely, which is, how do you keep the creative juices flowing through your head?
Wow. I don't have like a meditative regime or anything. I don't know. I think part of it is, trying to get out of the house every once in a while so that you're not just doing it 24/7. One of the reasons I poop out with creativity right before a show is that I'm just constantly trying to come up with creative things. I'm dying, I'm prepping, I'm coming up with names.
So you end up getting mentally, physically, everything exhausted.
Yeah, so it does help to spread it out a bit. So that's one of the things that I tried to do with Maryland Sheep and Wool. One of the improvements that I made in my processing for festivals is not doing it all at the end. So when I dye something that same week, I process it and package it and name it and take all my notes and everything. So then I'm only coming up with a couple of colorway names instead of trying to fathom 35 or 40 at the end of the process. So that really helps to spread it out. I've also stopped naming things that I can't repeat.
Okay. What's your best aha moment that you'd like to share?
So I was thinking about that question because I read it, before the podcast, and this has nothing to do with fiber. Is it okay?
Absolutely.
Okay. So recently I was out with a friend at a bar having a drink. I don't go out very often here in Seattle while I'm unemployed at the moment. But we were sitting at the bar chatting, and some guy kind of walked up to my side and was doing something like this and trying to talk. And I thought, oh wow, he's really drunk. It's super early in the night to be that drunk. And my friend said, no, he's on meth. And I had this light bulb because I had never identified that as meth behavior before. So now everywhere I go, I'm like, oh, I know what that looks like. And I'm so proud of myself. And for me, this is, it's a funny thing. Growing up where I did, you would think that I could recognize drug use, but I just have these blinders on. I don't see it. So I was very proud of that recognition. Aha.
Aha. Well, that's a good one.
It's important. It's important to recognize stuff like that. Otherwise, you can get into some situations with people you don't want to be around.
That is so true. That is so true. Onto something happier. Is there an essential tool that you couldn't do without? And please remember that we are family friendly.
My stovetop, obviously. I need some way to apply heat to generate the steam to set the dye. So I do a lot of I mostly hand paint. So it's not immersion dyeing. It is steam set. So almost everything else I could adapt to. If I didn't have plastic wrap, I could find a different way to package up the fibers so that I could dye it and heat it. But if I didn't have a heat source, none of this would be possible.
That's actually a very awesome answer. I used, I don't know if you know, but I've been trying to prevent the, you know, when you do a red, there's usually a little bit of bleeding that you'll end up getting. And it's not bleeding in your sense of the term bleeding, it's bleeding in my sense of the term of like a little one single drop in a gallon of water of red, and I'll call it bleeding. So I did a citric acid wash last week where they had me wrap my Gradient Fail 2 yarn in at wet with the citric acid wash on it and wrap it in plastic wrap and put it in the microwave. And I must say I was freaking out having to apply heat to my plastic encased, just finished spinning it yarn because I thought it was going to turn into a plasticky mess. And using a microwave where there isn't a real good absolute control over how much heat is being applied totally, well, it made the OCD part of me just, I freaked out. Fortunately, Mr. Mitten was there, as were the two pups, and they calmed me down, but it was a very stressful time. So I can understand how your stovetop would be so essential.
Yeah, definitely. And I used to have gas, and now I have electric since I moved. So it took a while to adapt, but I think we're in a good place now. We're familiar with one another.
It is an adjustment period, though.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. The water is different here. I've never lived in a place with soft water. It's new to me. And that also affects things. But I think I might be confusing myself, but I think it's better that I'm dyeing with soft water than hard water because, am I making this up? Is it more likely for things to leak out in soft water than in hard water? That sounds right. But I'm always really concerned because I know that water quality can affect the finished skein when you're washing it. Like if things wash out clear for me, but you get it at home and it like bleeds to high heaven, I'm sitting here, I don't know why it's doing that. You know, it was fine with my water. But a lot of times it's just is it hard or is it soft water?
Right. And I think a lot of people don't understand when you do, when you become an indie dyer, it's not just like, oh, I want to play with colors and I got some roving. There's a lot of chemistry and science that goes behind it.
Oh, yeah. There definitely is. Math. I early on, I had figured out, you know, there are all these calculations that you have to do to get, you know, a certain percentage stock solution and a certain percentage depth of shade based on fiber weight and all of these things. And I made a really simple, I did the math once, and now I have ratios that I just have taped up to my fridge, so I don't even have to think about it anymore. Like, I know how much I'm adding to make my stock solutions, and I know how much I need to get a certain depth of shade done.
That is awesome. That just makes everything so much easier. And I think in pretty much everything you do in the fiber world, from, you know, knitting your finished project to spinning the yarn to washing the yarn, washing the roving or washing the fleece, it's all math. So if our math teachers really wanted us to pay attention in school, maybe they should have brought in some sheep. And
but then if people were counting the sheep, would they just fall asleep and not pay attention?
This is true. But maybe we could have done that when we were in kindergarten, when we had nap time. We could have counted sheep and learned our one, two, threes that way. Could have
So
been
you
easier.
should just be teaching class in your backyard with those sheep, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that would be terrific. No. Okay. Um, the next question is from me. As you may have heard or seen pictures, um, I'm trying to knit a sweater for Brian Beck. I'm
Yes.
on my third attempt at knitting the second pattern because sometimes things just don't work out the way one wants them to work out, no matter how much math one does. Um, and I call these my dough moments, like the Homer Simpson dough,
Yeah.
because you're sitting there, you're working on it, and then dough, how did that happen kind of thing. Um, so do you have any dying doughs?
Yes. So many. So many. In fact, I have a couple of large bags full of them. So often if I'm having a really long day and I'm doing, 60, 80, 100 braids in a day, at the end of it, I just want to sit back and have some wine. And I lose track of time. And I forget I have fiber on the stove getting steamed.
Oh my God.
Sometimes the lid, I usually leave the lid not quite all the way on, because if you have it fully enclosed, sometimes there's too much heat and the water over bubbles.
Like pasta.
And like pasta. And that kind of happened more than once. So I have a bag full of stuff that, it's not unspinnable, but I wouldn't sell it because I value quality in what my customers get. So I have a big bag of stuff that I'm eventually going to spin myself. They're all gorgeous. They all ran clear when I rinsed them, but there's just some slight felting. So those are like mini dough moments because they're salvageable. The biggest one, I've had one spill in my history of dyeing. One. And it happened after I moved here. I decided new apartment, new space, new setup, and new process, of course, right?
Sure, that's always a good.
There's a little room in the basement where I have a washer and dryer, and I had enough space to set up a shelving unit and put a table down there for dyeing. So that's where I did all my work, because I like having a separate space for living and a separate space for working. When they're both just on top of each other, it makes me anxiety issues. So I decided to get, the little electric burners, so that I wouldn't have to lug all the stuff up the stairs and use the oven in the kitchen. So I had an electric burner on a table in the basement with a water bath canner, and I was doing a gradient. So I actually had 4 of these set up. And I decided this is a new way of doing gradients that takes less time. You just take the braid, you split it into 4 sections in the bowls, you put the color in the bowls. So it was kind of like a Dutch oven type thing.
Uh-huh.
The cobalt blue onto the floor. Blue everywhere on the floor. Everywhere. I had to throw my pants away. So I don't know what I was freaking out. So the moment the spill happened, I took my pants off. So I was
because that's what one always does, is take one's pants off when okay.
I was using it for liquid control, so that the liquid wouldn't go elsewhere. And they had already, my skin was blue from the initial splash through my pants. So that tells you how wet they were.
So you were smurfed.
I was smurfed, mostly from the knees and the shins, not elsewhere.
Well, they are short. Tiny little.
Yes. But my basement area attaches to the garage, which I live in a triplex. So I'm renting one apartment, and then there are 2 other apartments. So one of the other apartments rents that garage, and there's a door. And I opened the door to like clean up the blue. And luckily it's like coated concrete. It came up with a bleach spray. It's not a problem. But, you know, he was upset about that.
Wow.
So, and that was the last time I ventured out of the way that I know how to do things without having skills. So that was, oh my God. And to be honest, the neighbor being upset is like nothing to me. Having a spill, kind of apoplectic just thinking about it. Months ago. No, I'm not okay with that.
Well,
that's not how I operate things.
You made me feel a lot better about my sweater. Thank you very, very much. I appreciate that.
I probably also, I don't want to say how many pounds of fiber I lost, and it wasn't even just Falkland, which is my cheapest base. There was like yak silk and other things in there, and it was just like trash. It wasn't even salvageable. It was just trash.
Oh, that's
another, most of the issues that I've encountered with dyeing are salvageable. I wouldn't sell them as is, but if I spin them and fold them a little bit, they're going to be fine.
Well, I do remember you did make, you had a whole bunch of junk one time, and you and the girls got together and you made this beautiful bat out of it.
But Terry, oh my gosh. I'm blanking on her Ravelry name, but Terry, she was there for that bat day, and she kept saying, "Wow, your rejects are so beautiful." I'm like, well, they're not what I wanted them to be. So, thank you. But, I have a little bit of type A going on up in here.
I think that most people who spin and everything, they're looking for that control for their end product. So that's totally acceptable in our world.
Good.
Well, I have one last question for you.
Yes.
Are you ready?
Sure.
Okay. What's the biggest life lesson or advice that you've gotten or would like to give from living the fiber lifestyle?
Don't look behind you, because it will terrify you how deep in the rabbit hole you are.
That's true.
Just keep looking forward. Keep getting excited, because otherwise you're going to get paralyzed. Don't go through your stash. Don't sort it. Just keep hiding it. Pretend it's not a problem.
This is why they make TARDIS couches. Those are couches where you put the fiber behind it and nobody can see it, and it can fit as much as you possibly want. Although I did meet a woman today who, her husband was upset because she had 5 fleece in the house. What he didn't know is when she went downstairs to take one of those fleece out, that's the chocolate one that I brought home with me, she went to get her coat out of the closet, and as she did that, 2 fleece fell down and hit her on the head. Because she actually has fleece hidden everywhere in the house. And he only sees 5 of them. I'm really fortunate with Mr. Mitten that he not only knows where all of my fleece and yarn are, but he's okay with that. But then again, I have a very small, relatively speaking, collection.
Yeah, I know. If I were living with someone right now, it would certainly be a problem. Becoming single was the biggest reason my shop is the size that it is right now. Because I now have space to have that, like enough stock to have the shop be the size that it is. Before it had to fit on these 2 shelves or I couldn't have it. And now I have an entire room and part of the basement. And I have, you can't see it, but I have about 40 kilos of fiber in bags in my living room.
40 kilos.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's 88 pounds.
Yeah, that math came to me really quickly.
Uh-huh.
So
I
that's
just realized how much was still in here. I thought I had cleaned up, and I'm like, oh, it's looking great now. So much fiber. Jesus, that's why you don't do inventory. Do not look at your stash. Don't figure out how much you have. Don't look behind you. Just go forward.
Wow. You know, I'm actually out of questions, but you did just bring one to mind. Do you really make an effort to keep your store inventory separate from your personal inventory of?
I do. And I have. So I have. They don't look like these. These shelves are for display usually.
I really do love the display, and I wanted to thank you for going through all the trouble making it look so pretty for our vidcast. It's just gorgeous.
But I have, storage shelving units, and there are 3 of them. 3 of them full of fiber. Plus, I usually store fiber in boxes instead of like having piles of bags. I don't like compressing things. I don't want any chances of the fiber not being as awesome as when I first, finished it and packaged it.
Well, it is a living thing, and it does need air and space to be in.
Yeah. So I do have a stack of boxes that I use for when I do shows. I pack the boxes in a van. But then I have separate like plastic drawer tubs for my personal stash. So they're all in the same place, but they're separated by storage, I guess.
Me, I don't sell anything of what I do, so I don't have to keep it separate. But I did have a beer bread business at one point in my life, and I've also had a dog biscuit business. Because I like doing little cottage industry startups and running them for a few years. I think it's fun. It's just a little hobby of mine. Anyway, especially with the dog biscuits, because I do have the pups.
Yeah.
It was really important for me to keep inventory and personal separate. And then whenever they ate the inventory, I had to actually reimburse the business for it, and that did happen a couple times.
So usually when I spin my own fiber, none of it is really for me. Anything that I dye that I spin, like this braid of Wraith, it's not. I'm not going to make a cowl and mitts for me to wear. I'm going to make a cowl and mitts for them to be on display at a booth, or I'm going to sell the skein. I haven't really decided what to do with this. So usually if I spin something that I dyed, it's not for me. haven't really. I was shocked at how little fiber I've bought in the past year and a half, because I just have so much, and I feel so guilty about not spinning shop samples if I'm spinning someone else's fiber. So I haven't spun other people's fiber because of all the guilt.
But how else do you get experience with different types of fibers if you don't spin someone else's fiber?
Have you looked at all of my blends? I have so many different kinds of fibers available.
I have. I was just trying to help you out with a little bit of justification for when you.
Oh, sorry. No, I've got tons of different fibers that I get to experience through the blends that I offer, both the hand-dyed custom blends and my Savage blends.
Oh, you know which ones I love. I just, what kills me is I'm allergic to alpaca.
And I use that a lot.
You use that a lot, and I go to your shop and I'm just like, I have to. No, it's alpaca.
Merman, no alpaca.
I know, and it's.
I don't know if you can see the sparkle.
Believe me, I know that. I know that well.
Oh, I did want to show this. You know toxic waste, right? It's yellow and black and gray and red.
Yes.
You haven't spun it, have you?
I have not.
Well, Elaine T77 on Ravelry, Elaine, did spin. Sorry, I'm trying to get this light better. Did spin this little sample. Can you even see that?
I can. I can see all the different types of colors that are in it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then she wove this. And so the fabric ends up being like mostly gray. It's a tweedy gray. You get pops of yellow and pops of red.
Mm-hmm.
And it's amazing how you go from this to this.
And
you don't think it would.
That's her interpretation of it too. I think if you gave it to another spinner, you might even highlight another color in it. That's that.
Yeah, so the way that you spin those like unblended fibers can be very different, but definitely the way that she spun it was exactly what I was thinking about. I wanted that tweedy gray look.
And it does look like toxic sludge.
Yes, it does.
Well, Ken, I'm actually going to let you off the hook because we've been chatting for, over an hour. So
wow.
If we can edit, this is going to be 2, maybe 3 little interviews because I guess you and I are just chatty Cathys.
Well, I mean, that's not surprising considering we're both sweeties.
This is true. This is true. And even though this month I haven't made it to the chattiest on the board, I've been known some months to, or even just days to up the count of posts by 1 or 2 maybe. But those who want to know the truth have to go on to Ravelry to find out, because tells all of our secrets. There's nothing hidden there.
Kath doesn't know all of my secrets.
I think that might be a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
I think there are some things that even the sparkly unicorns should not find out about. And my dogs are sworn to secrecy. So
that's a good policy.
You can tell when I call them pups, everything's cool. But if I call them the dogs, it's upping the level. But I want to thank you for joining us on the Mitten on Knittin. for our episode 14 and probably 15 and 16. And if I don't shut up soon, maybe 17. And taking so much time out of your day for something that was supposed to be a few hours ago.
Of course, no problem. Thank you so much for having me.
And thank you, as always, for sharing your yarn from the Homestead Hobbyist with us and everybody else outside of the Sweeties and outside of the Mitten on Knittin. We love it, and your colors are amazing. Your blends are, to die for. And of course, your big fluffy balls of roving
That's right.
are so popular. So thank you, thank you, thank you. I had a great time. I hope I can edit so we can get some more pictures of your product in. And
maybe cut out that thing about math.
Or yeah. The part where I was moving around and the ceiling was spinning, and so was everyone else, because they were like, whoa. So now you can slouch now, because we're done recording, and thank you for listening, and hope you tune in again next week. And I'm going to stop the broadcast. Wait, one more shot of you, Ken, so you can wave goodbye.
Oh. Bye.